Howdy. I want to kind of talk to you guys about strategies to try and increase your profitability. If you're trying to get into cattle, barrier to entry right now is also the reason why it's profitable. It costs a lot of money to buy cows right now. And so what are some ways you can get into it and try and make a couple bucks and enjoy it? Well, what we did was we didn't go straight for the Angus. We didn't go straight to the commercial stuff. I've never even been to an auction. So what we did was we went around on our buy and sells and looked for some of the cows that aren't worth as much. They don't grow as good. They don't have black hides. Sometimes they got horns. But we were just looking for things that you could still breed to an Angus. That was kind of the main idea. So you can use Facebook as a search engine, and you can type in, well, if you see an animal pop up on one of your buy and sells, you can go quickly over to your Facebook, and you go into your search at the top, and you can search that specific cross to whatever commercial cross you think you can get your hands on. And in my case, I just did everything to cross Angus just to see, because there's lots of Angus guys out here. As it turns out, they sell like hotcakes. So I kind of reconfirmed what I'm about to say. You can buy cheaper animals, you can cross them, and the bull cost doesn't change whether or not it's covering an Angus or if it covers a Highland. It seems to be that bull doesn't change. So what we did is we bought what we could afford to buy and got into it. Couple of longhorns. I've got a mini Hereford in there. The mini Hereford, I had to be really careful with. I wasn't going to do it unless she was close to the same size as the standard Hereford I also bought. I bought a standard Hereford as a bottle babe, but she was fantastic. I probably paid a little bit too much for her. But I went and I measured her at the rear hip, got an idea how tall she was. Went and took a look at this mini Hereford, and they were within a couple inches of each other. I'm like, great, so this is going to be at her age, she was already taller than what a standard miniature Hereford was. If it wasn't the case that she wasn't going to be a big mini Hereford, I wasn't going to do it. Turned out she was. So, bought her home. Anyways, bought all these cows. Highland, Texas Longhorns, mini Hereford. I actually have a full-size Angus in there too. She's getting on the old side, but we'll squeeze a few calving years out of her. Didn't pay fuck all for her. I actually didn't pay anything for her, but I had to go quite a ways for her. It's one of those things, you just get rid of her. And yeah. This is my aunt that I was getting rid of her, and she lives in a completely different province. And she was a little attached to her and didn't want to eat her, so I went to pick her up. Hindsight, she eats a lot. She eats a lot. I go out there, those Texas Longhorns are nibbling away, and then she's just sitting there. She's like, it's like watching my pigs when they go into a feeding trough. It's hilarious, but also horrifying. Anyways, so we just bought what we can afford, and the idea is we want to continue. I actually bought a bred cow this year. I haven't gone to pick her up yet, and it's just another one. I actually don't even know what breed she is. She's black, she's got some little horns, she's got some white on her, and the fella I got her off of was also the same guy I got my first cow off of, my very first cow. When we got into this, we started off with a couple of bulls, and we were going to raise them on for beef. It was just because we couldn't say no to the price. But the point of the video was actually supposed to be, you can buy cheaper breeds and keep in mind with what you want to breed with to try and increase the value of the offspring. Because the value of the offspring seems to be, even on crossbred cows, seems to be pretty close. Unless they're way too far one way. Right? So if you go and you pull yourself off, like if you go and run Texas Longhorns and you go Angus cross on your Texas Longhorns, if they're spotted and have horns, they don't do well at auction. They don't do bad. They still pull because they're Angus cross, and they normally fill out really well, but most people look at them like they're just a Texas Longhorn. And that's the shits. But if you can pull off black-hided cows, even if they're not polled, you could disbud them as calves and get away with it. Oh, but it just always they end up black. They don't even see much of a hit on the market. They actually usually just perform at whatever their weight is. And now you might be a little behind what others are at the same age, but you're going to perform for the weight. When, I mean, your feed inputs are going to be per weight anyways. We're talking 2% per day, like 2% of body weight per day, right? So if it's 500 pounds or 600 pounds, you're paying for whatever it is to feed it anyways. So, but anyways, even the crossbred calves seem to do well because they do fill out better anyways. Like, the point of what I was getting at is buying lower end stock that crosses well still performs better than what the purebred stock does financially. And then you can keep in mind there's a few breeds that are like enhancer breeds, right? But they normally come with risks, or they come with another downside. And then it depends on what you're trying to enhance, right? Like Texas Longhorn could be an enhancer breed if you're searching for hardiness and drought tolerance. That's a real good example. You can have a bunch of Angus cows and you go, man, I'm tired of like always having to deworm these things, always having to bring in higher quality forage. And so you cover them with a Texas Longhorn for a few years and replace everyone with first time heifers that are easier to eat, more drought tolerant, and they still are crossed Angus. So when you go to rebreed them back to Angus, your parent stock is hardy, your I guess those would be F2 calves would be also still hardy, but they'd be more inclined to be Angus, right? So you can enhance what you're stocking for what you have, or like what your farm is, right? Now there's a few breeds that seem like they just enhance everything across the board. Not even a few. I think there's actually, there's probably two I can think of, and that would be Charolais and Speckled Park. But they both have their own risks. They both are more commercial breeds and usually have a fairly large calf, and it's pretty hard. Like, I wouldn't recommend putting those on heifers, but I wouldn't say I've never seen it done, and I would never say that I wouldn't, at least by accident, do it. If I had a couple really big heifers and I was running a Speckled Park or a Charolais on everyone else, I probably would just cover them. And even then, like, I've seen some of these guys do exactly what I'm talking about, where they run Corianis, and Corianis are like the epitome of cheap parent stock that really breed up. I'd seen a couple of these guys run Corianis and run Charolais on the Corianis. First time heifers or not. Like a big herd of Corianis and a few Charolais bulls, and they put out nice filled out white cream or super like almost silver gray calves and do really well in market. And that would be great. I mean, but you're kind of stuck. Corianis kind of seem like they're a real drag down. It's hard. It's like if I go and I look at Coriani Angus cross, there's some of them that look fabulous. They look great. But then there's some you look at them and it's like the Coriani genes were just real strong in them or something, and they're just still short, bony things with horns, and they're still beef. They're still shaped like beef. They still taste like beef. So I mean, no matter what, I don't think you lose, especially if you decide you're gonna run all the way to finish. Because this was, like I said, you pay 2% per day. So it doesn't matter if it's 500 pounds or if it's 1,000 pounds, you're paying for what it is. And the duration doesn't seem to really change anything. It almost makes more sense to run the slower growing stuff, because it's not just your first calf that actually sees a savings, but it's your second calf too sometimes, because they don't hit maturity or mature size yet. Like Texas Longhorns are a good one, where a mature Texas Longhorn is like 4 years old. So you can pop out like 2 calves before they hit mature weight, and you're never paying for a 1,400 pound cow. Or up until that point, you're not paying for a 1,400 pound cow. You're paying for an 800 pound cow and then you're paying for, let's say, an 1,100 pound cow or a 1,200 pound cow, and then a 1,400 pound cow. So it's one of those things, like, you save a little bit of money running heifers as well, but you lose time, and that's the shit. The quickest way to get into it is buying cow-calf pairs or bred heifers. But that's definitely not the cheapest way to get into it. And so you kind of got to balance the two. I mean, if you're a farmer and you sit here and you just say, oh, well, time is money and you want to try and pay yourself a wage, go and work for somebody. I'm telling you this now. There's not enough margin there to sit there and think you're going to make a fucking wage. You can look at it like a salary once you start getting some money moving, but man alive, I hear this all the time. People go, time is money, but you'll fucking sleep for free. I'll tell you that now. He's like, ugh, it's frustrating. It's one of those things, like, if you wanted to break down your labor costs, then yeah, just go get a fucking job. It's not what it is. It's just not that. What it is responsibility. It's food sovereignty. It's not the same thing. Anyways, I'm going on a bit of a tangent. The point I'm trying to make is you can buy lesser quality breeding stock and you can build up from there. You don't need to jump feet first into getting a loan to buy cows, and then you gotta pay whatever it is, 10 or 14% on a livestock loan, and then that eats away because it's not actually like you're paying 10 or 14% on a $4,000 or $4,000 bred heifer. You're paying 10 to 14% annual, so it actually compounds and it ends up being way more than $4,000. Meanwhile, if you were to go the other way at $4,000, you can buy two lesser cows and run them for that same $4,000. I mean, like, if I use real world numbers, like what I'm currently paying, last year I paid $1,600 for a Texas Longhorn steer. If you had a heifer, I would have bought it too, but you didn't have a heifer. So if you went and you spent $16 each on wean calves, on wean Texas Longhorns, you're into it for $3,200. You've got an $800 difference, and you've bought them outright. And what are they going to do? They're going to increase in value by another $400 between 6 months to a year, and they're not going to cost $400 to grow. And then you get them bred at 13 months, 14 months old, right? So in 8 months from the time you bought them, you can breed them. And then at 2 years old, they spit out their first calf. Meanwhile, it's cost you less than $1,000 if you don't have grass to feed them on hay. And you've got a calf on the ground. It depends on what way you went. If you went small Angus, then you're going to be able to squeeze a few extra bucks out of the calf. The difference is probably going to be even F1 Angus cross calves as dairy or like dairy cross calves are fetching about $1,000 to $1,500 right now on auction, depending on their size and when they go in. So those F1 dairy crosses, the bottle calves, we're talking day olds, or like a day to week olds. So if you put that on there as your baseline, like, you're already marking up. Let alone the fact that, like, that wean calf at $1,600, you're gonna be up because it's not a Texas Longhorn; it's a Texas Longhorn Angus cross. You're talking about a much like a different thing. So you can cross up, and it's like I said, like, there's breeds that seem like they cross up to basically everything, and that's, like I said, the Charolais and the Speckled Parks. And the reason why I say that, you look at things like Corrientes, and Angus on the Corriente doesn't seem to cross up nearly as well as a Charolais. I'm sure a Belgian Blue would be the same thing, and for the same reason, it's that double muscle trait. But then you can go and no matter what, an Angus would still be a cross up. Like, I'm not disregarding that. I'm just saying they're not as impressive. And it seems like the Corrientes handle it fine. But then you look at your Texas Longhorns, and it seems like, okay, first time heifers on Texas Longhorns don't do so great on the Charolais. But I've seen lots of Charolais Longhorn crosses. You could do it in the future and cross up, but then you see some of these speckled parks, and I've seen some of these speckled parks on the Canadian Sires or Gen X, all these other places where you can look at sires. And I've seen some of these guys with birth weights of 62, 63, 64 pounds on some, not most of them. Most of them are close to that 70, 80 pound mark, and that makes it kind of sketchy on first time efforts. But if you can get them at 60 pounds or close to 60 pounds, all of a sudden that's a good candidate. And they seem like they cross well to everything. Like you look at Angus Jersey crosses, they're nice, they're better than jerseys. You look at a fucking Speckled Park Jersey cross, ooh, that's some good looking beef. That's a way better looking animal. And I don't even know why, because like a Speckled Park isn't a double muscle trait. A Speckled Park just seems like everything you cross them to is better. Maybe not as good as Speckled Park, but they increase the, like, they seem like they're just better across the board. They fill out better, they take out the hips in most of the animals. I've never seen a Speckled Park Corniatic cross, but I'd assume it'd be pretty close. But things like jerseys, where they got a really high pin bone, they disappear if you cross out the Speckled Park. I'd be curious to do the same thing with the Charolais. But it's like I said, like it's all in the eye of the beholder. It depends on what you're trying to improve. If you're trying to improve drought tolerance, like I said, Texas Longhorn's a pretty good option. Another good option would be a Brahma, right? Those ones are Brahman cows. They do really good too. I mean, that's why Brangus is a thing. And they fill out really good as well. That's another really good enhancer. It seems like there's almost no downside to going Brahman. But where I'm at, Brahman is kind of a hard breed to get because they're not super cold tolerant, right? And that's the same thing with Texas Longhorns. They're not super cold tolerant. I don't think I'd run Texas Longhorns much further north than where we live. These guys here, like, they made it fine. Like, I did stall out. Like, my steer did stall out where we are. He slowed way down in his weight gains, but as soon as the temps went up, he just hit her pattern. He just kept on mowing down feed, and he's growing. So it's one of those things, like, in one hand out the other, you gotta kind of look at what your options are. Angus is a super solid choice, but it's not always the best. And it's like I was saying in the beginning of the video, if you're looking to breed up, you can go ahead and you can take a look at the animals you're looking at, and you can look at what the crosses you have interest in are, and you could just try and get a consensus of what they look like between Google images, between auction sales, because sometimes some auctions do post pictures because they also host online auctions, and sometimes you can even find those crosses currently for sale, and sometimes you can even find people who produce those crosses on your Facebook, and you can reach out to them. They'll be like, how do I know you? And you're simply like, no, I'm just messaging because I saw your ad, I had interest in the crossbreeds you were selling, I wanted to know more. And most people won't sit there and act like the information you're looking for is garbage. Most people will talk to you about it. Because it's one of those things, it's like, oh, yeah. Like, here's a good example. High parks. Highland Cross Speckled Parks. And this is where I got onto Speckled Parks. I was looking to see what makes a really good cross to the Highlands, right? I wanted to try and find something that crosses well, in terms of it keeps its hardiness, it keeps its cuteness for hobbyists, and the idea being, like, we might want to keep it behind if it was a heifer, right? So what would be a good cross, right? Because going straight to Black Angus, I wasn't too, like, I'm not crazy about the way they look, I'm not crazy about the fact that they get to the same size. I do like the fact that they grow really vigorously, they end up being pretty hardy. But I don't like the idea of a short, long hair, right? So you've got two different coat lengths in one cow. They just end up looking kind of weird. That's not saying I wouldn't keep one. I was just like trying to see what seems more appealing to me, right? And so I came across these Highland Speckled Parks, and it seems like they're taking off. There's a bunch of people selling these things, and that's where I got onto it. I'm like, okay, well, what about other breeds? Like, this opens up horizons for other cows I might want to take on, where I was like, I don't like it because the Angus cross to it doesn't look that much more impressive than what it was, or it doesn't seem like it performs much better than what the standard of the breed is, right? And that's what I mean, like the standard Texas Longhorn isn't that bad. Like, they actually perform pretty good. especially when you consider like they grow even at like down to, I think it was 1.5% of body weight per day. They can still grow. They don't do well, but they don't do as well as Angus does at 2% per day. But the Angus, that isn't the ceiling. Angus will eat more than 2% per day if the feed's available. And this is where people don't talk about like what the actual feed inputs are. And this is what I say about sheep as well. Sheep, the feed inputs are much higher for the body weight than it is for cows. So standard on cows is 2% per day, right? And you get good growth rates. Sheep, 3.5 to 4.5 depending on the breed. That's up body weight per day. That's pretty rough. And there's not much wiggle room to breed up in sheep. But in cattle, it seems like there's quite a bit. So a 1,000 pound Texas Longhorn or Corriente, which would be a big Corriente, and that would be a small Texas Longhorn, could still get bred to something like a Charolais once it was a mature cow. And you can produce really nice big calves that would perform well and do really good, but you would have feed inputs of 1,000 pound Texas Longhorn that's drought tolerant, that will forage, and this is the only 2% per day of potentially lesser quality forage, right? So that's the other thing people don't consider as well when you get into this. People will sit here and be like, well, I'm going to take out a loan and buy myself some cows at the auction. Meanwhile, they're buying the most feed-intensive animals you physically could, given you're also going to maximize the dollar value you can get back. But that's not always where the money is, right? Just because you're maximizing on how much like can come in doesn't mean you're maximizing on profit. Profit is the difference between the money coming in and the investment going out. So if it costs you $500 less and you're seeing a $200 difference on the same weight calves, you made more profit by $300 running a lesser animal. And it's like I said, like these things are simple numbers, and people forget about this all the time. And when you're starting out, you could even start out like this, where you buy yourself lesser animals and you breed up, right? Doesn't mean you have to stay where you are. You could go 100% F1 calves, right? It gets to the point where you're 100% F1 calves, resell 100% of the stock you initially bought at a higher value if you bought them as weaned calves, right? If you bought them as weaned calves, just so as markets continue to go up or at least stay the same within 5%, you will see an increase in the value of that animal up until 6 years. At least in our market, I would say probably best off if you started selling them off at 4, so when people had more interest in them. But you sell them off and you replenish your herd with 100% F1 calves that cost you less to produce. So now your initial investment on these cows, or not your initial investment, but your investment on these cows is going to be a fraction. Like you're talking about, well, actually no, maybe it'd be staying about the same, but now 100% of your herd has a higher value. Because if it costs you $1,000 to buy the cows, it's $1,500 to buy the weaned calves, and then it costs you $1,000 to feed those calves out to the point where, or those weaned calves to the point where they put a calf onto the ground. You're into those calves for $1,000. You resell those for $2,000 or $2,500, or you get them rebred, so they've got another F1 calf in them. So now they're worth a little bit more money. Maybe you see closer to $3,000 on that bred Texas Longhorn. You get them gone. Your F1 calves go into production. Now you've got calves that are going to be coming out. You've replenished your money on your ROI, 100% of it, because you sold 100% of the stock. Now you're only into the animals on the ground for the cost of production of those animals. And that's not even looking at the idea that you could have potentially put one whole calving season out already. So those F1 calves, if you decide to sell them just to get money back in, then your second year calving, now you're keeping them back, right? Which it doesn't quite work out like that. You'd probably have to split it up between years, because you're not going to get 100% heifers. It doesn't work unless you're buying sex semen, which you might be able to with Angus, because there's dairies that run the crosses, but you wouldn't want to run, like, you wouldn't want to run an Angus cross in your dairy. I'm just not speaking from experience. I'm just saying I would think that doubling down on a dairy breed would be more efficient. You produce more milk if it was 100% dairy breed and not crossed a beef breed. But what I'm saying is, you can go and end up with 100% F1 calves and do that again and again until you get to the point where you're almost completely Angus genetics. But whatever your initial stock was, there'll be traces of it, right? So like if all of a sudden, like, let's say 7 years down the road, you're at the point where you're almost completely Angus and you spit out a spotted calf. Well, okay, well, we knew there was Longhorn in there at some point, right? And it's like these guys, you talk about some of these guys with commercial herds, and they're like, oh, we started off with Herefords because that's what was hot in the 80s, right? And then it's like, oh, but we went to black calves because they fetch more money. So we started breeding everything to the Angus, right? And then next thing you know, they've got a commercial herd of black or black baldies popping out black calves or black baldy calves going out to auction, but they're not purebred Angus, but they are certified Angus, and they're seeing top dollar value, even though they never started off as an Angus, right? But by the time you get so far removed, I mean, like, there's the other part too. Like, you're gonna see heterosis in mixing up genetics. Given the highest heterosis is the biggest difference in breeds. The closer and closer that those genetics get in the breeds, the closer and closer you get to purebred breeding to purebred, the less and less heterosis you have. So, like, let's say you get to the point where you got 7 generations of breeding in Angus, you throw in Hereford in there, now you got fucking huge heterosis. You got crazy amounts of heterosis. Why? Because you got 2 completely different genomes that both perform well. But anyways, we're getting past the point. You can start off and not spend $5,000 or $6,000 per head on cow calf pairs. You can get ahead by not spending $4,000 on bred heifers. You can get ahead by not spending $2,500 to $3,500 on weaned commercial calves. You could start off buying lesser calves and working up from there. That's what we're doing. Why? Because it costs too much fucking money, and I'm not willing to give a bank extra money that I should fucking make. Remember that. The bank, every time you buy something for your cows, there's a margin somebody else made, right? The hay, somebody else made the margin. They had to, otherwise they wouldn't sell it. They wouldn't do it. If there was no money to be made doing something, for the most part, people won't do it. Unless there's some kind of government subsidy, and then it doesn't matter. It just has to sell it. Right? That's why, like, I went and I bought some used hay equipment. I got really good deals. Like, really good deals. Like, not every farmer could ever do this. Good deals. I paid $200 for my round baler. I paid $50 for a PTO shaft on it. Hammered it on, welded it in place, spent $30 on a 6-pin switch. Now I've got myself an operating New Holland 850 chain baler. I paid $200 for the baler itself, right? I couldn't buy an operating baler for what I'm into it, right? Just, it is what it is. Like being broke is a real good tool, and being good at making things work. And this is why, like, when I said I wanted to get into calves, like, my first thought actually was Dexter's, because that's what we had previously. The dollar value in them wasn't even that bad, but then I saw Texas Longhorns for cheaper than what I was seeing some Dexter's for. I went and I bought a Dexter for $1,500 in the previous year, and then I was like, well, we gotta put something in the field this year. Texas Longhorns for $1,000 each. And it's a bigger cow, has a higher breed, like the breeding upscale is way better. Like, if you go 50% Angus, 50% Dexter, or 50% Angus, 50% Texas Longhorn, you end up with a bigger animal using Longhorn. So it just made more sense. So we did it. The dollar value going into the animal is going to be great, because they're going to grow up to be a bigger animal. And even on the beef market, a bigger animal makes more money because there's more money coming in. But it doesn't mean it actually made more money, right? And sometimes the most money is the highest turnover without experiencing the plateau, right? So if you can cut off at the top end, I'm fucking ranting and rambling here. But if you can cut off Like, just because it's 2% per day doesn't mean it's infinite. It hits a point where the growth curve goes like this, and it just like it barely goes up in it. And it turns into they eat 2% per day, but they're not putting on 3 pounds a day. They're not putting on 2 pounds a day. They're not putting 1 pound a day. They're not even putting on pounds per day. They're maintaining it 2% per day. You got to get them on. If it's a steer, if you're eating it for beef, you can't keep them at that point. Once you hit mature weight, there's no point continuing to feed it. Unless it's a pet, then, you know, if it's a pet, then you do whatever you're going to do. It doesn't need to make money because it's a pet. But, yeah, fuck, that was a ramble. How the fuck did I get so far ahead? Oh, well. Anyways, you get the point. You don't need to start off going to the auction, buying the high dollar commercial breeds in order to try and be successful. In fact, you'd probably be more successful if you didn't. You'd probably be a little more successful if you're stuck into the buy and sells. You bought lower value animals that breed up well. That's plain and simply it. Yeah, sure, you're going to be held back a little bit when you hit the auction because you're not running purebred stock, but you're not going to be held back to the point of 50%. You're going to be held back by what? Like, you're talking about an animal that matures at 1,400 pounds to an animal that matures at 1,500 pounds or 1,600 pounds, right? But then you've got heterosis on your side, so you might not even see the actual difference. Like, the difference might actually end up being the mature weight at 3 or 4 years old, which you'll never see in the beef market because you're not going to raise out for 4 years. Anyways, you get the point. You can be better with your money.